Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us on our new Stage 300 webinar series, Working in the New Normal. My name is Steven. I'm the Marketing Manager at Acumen, and I'm here with Ian Cook, who is our VP of Account Management, and Nick Nabozny, who heads up our pre-sales team. With the world changing around us, many businesses are looking for new technologies and tips on how they can take their business from surviving to thriving. So we decided to make a 4-part series that focuses on how you can take back control, automate your business processes, gain visibility of data, and become more efficient while working in the new normal. Please note that today's webinar is in listen-only mode and should be around 1 hour long. Near the end of each product demo, we'll take some time to answer a few questions, so please use the chat option during that time. Today's topic is controlling your business in the new normal, and throughout the presentation, we'll be answering a few key questions. The first one is, why do we need control? Which we will dive deeper into why organizations may need to find new ways to protect their business and how they can minimize errors even if they are working remotely. The second question is, what parts of businesses can benefit from control? We think all parts can benefit, but we will look into specific sides of each business, such as sales, accounting, operations, and more. How do clients improve their internal controls? There are many ways to do this, and there's also many solutions out there that can help, which Ian and Nick will showcase a few product demos that will focus on ways on how you can take back control of your business and answer any questions that you may have. We have a lot to cover today, so I will now pass it on to Ian and Nick.
Thanks, Stephen. This is Nick. Everyone, thanks again for joining us this afternoon. And first, let's talk about why we need control. And I'm just going to go through a few quick PowerPoints to kind of set the stage, and then we'll get into the good stuff and get into showing you some tools on how you can do it. So first, why do we need control? Well, the new normal, whatever that is these days, certainly has changed business, right? And a lot of people are now working remotely, can't always see the things you used to see in the organization. There might be new staff, with less training. So there's definitely a lot of need now to regain control and tighten things up so that business can stay protected, right? We have a lot of clients out there that need certain certifications like ISO 9000, 9001 type requirements. We have a lot of clients that do get audits, and so you need controls there, especially now that everyone is remote, as I mentioned. So what we're going to do today is talk through a number of different examples that we've helped clients do or implement to regain some of these controls. Next slide, please. And so, as Stephen said, what parts of a business can benefit from control? Well, the easy answer is every part, right? Especially in these current times. But, we want to talk through some very specific examples of how we've helped a sales team get better control, of how, the accounting team was lacking some control now that they're remote, how purchasing team was struggling with adding new vendors, how operations and warehouse teams can better manage inventory. It's a huge expense, right? And need controls to make sure that everything's in place at the right time. And then lastly, talk about some HR issues or some people issues. So really every department or every team in your organization can certainly benefit from control. And these are only examples that we're going to cover today. So there's many more, but these are some real life examples that we've helped our clients with. So just very quickly to talk through the products we're going to show. Ian is going to talk through a product by Norman called Norming Security. He's going to talk through ways to restrict access to certain areas of your business, like customers or price list or banks. So you may have users that are in Sage 300 that have the correct settings there, but might still see too much data. So Ian's going to show you a solution for that. I'm then going to talk about a tool called Orchid Extender, which is one of my favorite add-ons to the Sage 300 suite. We're going to talk about adding some workflow, adding some audit logging, adding some approval and rules to your screens to help with data entry, to restrict certain changes that get made without some visibility of or some control over what happens. Then Ian is going to talk about a product called User Management from TaiRox and check approval. Again, getting control over who can see and who can access certain information, getting control of money going out the door, which is very important in today's time. And then also, controlling things like multi-currency rates and uploading them and making sure those things are correct. And then lastly, I'm going to finish up by talking about a suite of products that we've implemented for clients from AutoSimply. And, this is all around better management, better control of your inventory. And, I'll talk through some examples of how we help clients, regain control of that, especially, as I said, remotely. And then lastly, we'll open it up for some questions. So with that, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Ian to start the demonstration.
Thank you, Nick. So as Nick had explained, today we're going to go ahead and look at a number of different solutions that we have already implemented with customers. And particularly when we are currently trying to work in a most unusual environment for us, where everybody is working from their home for the most part. And quite often it's harder to have that normal level of interaction with your colleagues to ensure that certain things just aren't overlooked. So one of the ways that certain of our customers have previously overcome this is to go ahead and implement a suite of different products from a company called Norming, which is a third-party developer to Sage, but which writes products that would look and feel exactly like a Sage product. So it's completely integrated into the software, and which really allows you to put formal controls in place about who within your organization is responsible for owning what part of the data. So examples of that could be and are that you could put security around certain bank accounts. That if you're an organization that operates multiple bank accounts, let's say for, you have an operating bank account out of which you cut checks. Maybe you have a money market account, which you have for investments, that somebody at a different level within the organization is responsible for managing that account. And even maybe a payroll. Sometimes payroll accounts can be a sensitive source of information to some companies. And so we've absolutely worked with companies before that have wanted to prevent somebody who's ordinarily doing bank reconciliations or accounts payable from being able to gain access to all bank information and potentially disclosing payroll information, which they ought not to be privy to. Other examples are around your financial modules. There is, as you probably know, as Sage users already, there's a pretty comprehensive built-in general ledger security product whereby you can restrict access to certain accounts from certain users. Okay, and by default, normally everybody has access to all accounts. So that definitely is the option of being able to turn that on. So people, particularly in harmony with bank security, if you could think how that would work, it might be that people don't need to know necessarily what transactions there are that are being posted through the general ledger account for payroll any more than you would want them to go into the bank and be able to see transactions there either. So general ledger, as I say, is native within Sage. But then there's been added to that other financial controls in the area of accounts payable and accounts receivable, that you can restrict access to certain vendors or to certain vendor groups so that people only see certain types of vendor. They may only be interested in placing purchase orders, for example, with their trade suppliers. They don't need to know about all of the other service providers that are working with the organization. And similarly, on the accounts receivable side, right now, particularly with the whole coronavirus thing going on, we want to make sure that every customer is being managed and followed up properly. So even in our own organization, you know that you work with a dedicated account manager. And so we have our data structured and segmented in such a way that you would be contacted by one individual more frequently than most others, and they are responsible for seeing and formally managing your account. So within Sage, you have the option of being able to do that as well. For people that are using more extensively within the organization, the operational suite of modules, that would extend to things like inventory control or sales orders or order entry or purchase orders. There's also security that can be extended to those also, so that when you're looking at a specific inventory and you're looking at fulfilling inventory, you might not be privy to inventories that are in a different location, but which might be reserved for taking care of certain of your customers. And also, if you're managing an account and you want to be able to offer pricing to your customers, you can even lock things down in terms of the pricing that your sales folks may see as well. So very thorough control. I know today we're going to focus primarily on norming security, and we'll get into the product demo in just a moment. Just in the interest of explaining fully the suite of security products that are available, there is also a project and job costing security product as well, written by another third party, but again, with the same technology that is used by norming. So they're using Sage 300 technology to be able to write that product, and it does work completely within Sage 300 seamlessly with the rest of the application. So without further ado, let's get into actually showing you some stuff and explaining how this sales security is just the segment that we're going to focus on for today. And I'm actually logged into my Sage screen at the moment as the administrator. And so the experience that most people on the webinar are probably experiencing is being able to see any customer at any time. So if I just go ahead and pop a list here from my receivables from my customer screen, you'll see that I get a list of every customer that I have in my sample data, notwithstanding which group they belong to. Similarly, if I switch over from this and I'm looking in my sales order screen, you'll notice that when I'm in order entry, I'm actually privy to all of the orders, no matter who is the customer. So once this pops open in just a second, we can see that every order, order 1, order 2, order 3, notwithstanding who the customer is, we have full access to every order that has ever been placed within the database. Okay? So what I want to do is just talk about how we could manage things or control things a little bit better, such that there isn't any unwritten silence that would allow for somebody to think, oh, that's probably going to be handled by my coworker. I don't need to worry about it, but really to focus your attention on exactly what it is that you're responsible for within the organization. So as we go into sales security, very, very simple module to deploy, very effective, very strong. The good news is it's pretty inexpensive point of entry, and also it's very simple to use. So there's not a huge learning curve to be able to go ahead and adopt any of these solutions, which I know is practically important for everybody right now that's trying to manage their businesses as best they can, in certain instances just fighting for survival, particularly with this coronavirus thing going on. So we're very cognizant of that, and we've deliberately structured these webinars around with that focus in mind, that we want to be able to provide every one of you with the best opportunity that there is of going ahead and putting other things in place in your business without it being a financial drain on you. So within the sales security product, we have the option of being able to control access either by an individual customer level, or as I'd alluded to, by customer group, which is what I'm going to do, or by an account set, or even by salesperson. Okay. So the difference is, compared with other things, that I have set up Max, who might be one of you guys' account managers. I've set up Max so that he is responsible for dealing with our wholesale customers in this example. And so Max is not going to be able to see our retail customers at all. So when we log in as Max, let me close out my screens. When we log in as Max, we should expect to see a different experience to that which we've just enjoyed as the administrator. So the first thing I want to highlight is that when we now go into our customers and we are looking at our customer list, Max, who I just demonstrated to you, is only able to see the wholesale customers, has no access to any retail customers. That helps to alleviate the burden for him and put control in place to make sure that anybody within the organization that doesn't take care of wholesale customers, we know immediately that person is Max. Okay, so as you would expect, this security applies not only to customers, but as I had mentioned previously, it also extends to orders within the order entry module. So Max, unlike our administrator, is only able to see orders that pertain to the retail customers. So he sees an incomplete list of the order numbers. You'll notice, for example, Max doesn't see order number 1, which was due to a retail customer, nor does he 3 or 4 or 6. You guys are as capable as I am of spotting the gaps in these numbering sequences, I'm quite sure. This also spills over into reporting. So some people will always ask, whenever we talk through this product, oh, well, that's great, but what happens if I run a trial balance? What if I'm looking at the status of my accounts and I'm running an aging report? Would Max see all of the documents that are in there? Well, the answer to that is absolutely no. Max only sees his own customers so that he can, again, focus his efforts directly on where he needs to be making phone calls to collect money. So you can see that we are actually skipping customer number 1200, for instance. And if we expand over here, Max can only see the same subsection of customers that he was able to see in his customer list before. And I've spent quite a bit of time going ahead and setting up exactly how this would work. So at this point, I just want to summarize again that we have security modules. General ledger is native to Sage. Accounts payable, accounts receivable, banking, order entry, purchase order, and inventory control can all be controlled at this level, and also with project and job costing. With that, I'll bring my first session to an end here. And Nick, if you're ready, I will relinquish control and pass the baton to you.
And Nick, before Ian, before we go and pass it on to Nick, can we ask a few questions? We had a few that came in.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go for it. Thank you, Stephen.
So the first one that came in was what reports can control with norming security?
So that's a good question. There's actually no restraints to it whatsoever. The way that the security product is embedded into the application is that it creates additional data within the same Sage database that drives the other modules. So if you're used to using Crystal Reports to modify any reports, or even if you're using something like Sage Intelligence, for example, which is the Excel-based add-in for reporting, then you can absolutely go ahead and constrain access to things there as well. So anything you can do within the Sage screen, you can also do within your reports as well.
Perfect. And then we had one more that came in. It says, can I stop my AP manager from seeing my payroll bank account details?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Funnily enough, somebody must have joined us a little late.
Yeah.
I actually spoke about that fairly early on in the process. I'm sorry. Absolutely, yes. You can go ahead and restrict anybody from seeing a bank account or even knowing that it exists. And just to clarify as well, again, sorry for that. You can also go ahead and put restrictions around that general ledger account that is supported by that bank account as well. Hopefully that answers the question.
Perfect. That's all that we had that came in so far, so we can pass it on to Nick as well.
Right, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. So the next thing we're going to talk about is a product called Orchid Extender. And there's actually a small suite kind of involved here. And so, as I mentioned earlier, this is one of my favorite add-ons to Sage 300. Has become one of them over the last few years. And the reason is you can add workflow, control, rules, logic, and audit logging to, quite frankly, any screen in Sage 300. And sometimes that makes it a little bit difficult to show because you might be after control in the general ledger, where someone else might be after control in inventory, and yet another client might be after better control around payroll and watching time cards and things like that. So it can be applied in any Sage screen. I'm going to show a few different examples of how that works, but just know that it can go across any of the modules that you have turned on and activated and are using in Sage 300. So let's jump in for a moment here to Extender, and we're going to talk about the workflow console. So now I want to take my Sage 300 data, the way it sits, and I want to add some approval levels for something. I might want to add approval for, say, a new GL account or a new customer, or a change to a customer credit limit, or maybe a new vendor, or change to a payroll pay rate. So whatever that might be, whatever you want to add workflow for, we can do. And this is what it might look like, once you get going with this and you're into this workflow console here. I can see, things are going on. Some things are marked as urgent, some are approved, and some are completed, and there's different types here. I can see what's assigned to me, or maybe in a group that I'm in. I can filter down to, just a certain stage or a certain status. So I can go through and, accept and post something, or I can approve or reject something. So I can navigate and work right from here if I am one of those approval managers or people in the process that is doing that approval or rejection on that particular transaction. So let's see what that might look like if we go into the system a little bit deeper. So the first thing I want to talk about is general ledger. And let's say we want to add a new GL account. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up an existing account here so I can go ahead and copy it. I know this isn't the tips and tricks class, but I'm going to do this. I like to create a new account by copying an existing one. So I pull up that and I add a new one. And this will be Nick's cash account, because we have so much of that we need an account for it. And I'm going to add it. So nothing different. I've just added a new account. Because I have workflow set up, it tells me right away that this account has been made inactive until approved. And so I get visual, notification that I can't go forward because something's going on behind the scenes here. And that workflow is now in play. So back over to our workflow console here. And I'll see a new entry for a new account automatically set up. So I can approve that here if I'm the admin or someone in that console. So let's talk about another example. So everyone has customers, everyone on the call in different industries, but ultimately we're selling something to customers, right? And we may want to manage or control our customers with a customer credit limit. So using the canned functionality here for the customer credit limit, I may, one of the employees may say, that's fine, we'll just bump them up to a $30,000 credit limit so I can push that sale through so I can get my commissions. But well, hang on a sec, workflow's in process. Credit limit is not updated yet. And looks like I misspelled updated, but I can fix that. So not only can I see that here, but if I come over, I can also look and see that it's also started to log for me. So Orchid Extender is going to start logging everything that has happened. If I am in the group of approvers, I can actually action this right here. I'm not, so I can just see that it is there and available to me and I cannot action it. And then I can see what's going on with this particular transaction. So a full audit log now is going on, what it's been changed to, what it's been requested, who did it, when it was done, and what's that entire process. So not only are we controlling what a user does here, but we're also logging what happens, each change, each field, and who's done that particular, who's made that particular change. Now, you don't always necessarily want to audit every single transaction or every single field in your system, but you may want to watch certain key things or add some workflow to certain key things. Another example we helped a client with recently is in accounts payable. So everyone probably gets vendor invoices. Let's go ahead and maximize this. So I've entered in my batch of invoices here, just like I do on a daily basis, and I'm ready to post. Well, I'm going to either go ahead and click post to mark this as ready to post, or just double click and mark it as ready to post. And it's going to say workflow for invoice batch 87 is already active, waiting for the finance manager to approve. So I already had double clicked that and submitted it to workflow, but it does tell me it's already in the process. You still have to wait. So I cannot approve that, or excuse me, I cannot post that until that has been approved by someone in my finance manager group. And you can set up various different levels or different groups for those approvals. I said, okay, well, maybe I can get around that, and maybe I'm gonna go and create a new vendor here, and I'm gonna cut a check out to vendor Nick here, so I can get you know, some nice payment out to my buddy here. I'm gonna click add and set that up. Oop, vendor has been made inactive until approved. So that has also now been submitted to workflow. So hopefully you're getting the idea here where wherever you want to turn on this workflow or this control, you can do it. And these are real life examples. We've helped clients add this level of control in their system, you know, over the last few months. And then lastly, and as I said, it can be any module, but we've also helped clients do this in payroll, you know, because that's a big one, you know, log every change to a pay rate. Also ask for approval for every change on a pay rate. You know, if you're not running Sage HRMS and you don't have an HR team controlling that and feeding that here, maybe you want some specific person or group of people to control changes in payroll. Now, I can also take that one step further now. So I can come in here and go into the workflow console and work with these. I can also build rules into the screen. And what I mean by that are things like, you know, if I have a particular vendor invoice that I'm entering in the system, you all know we can do a default GL account, right? Well, what if I had a particular vendor that I want to enter in here, and I want to block the usage of a certain GL code, or block the usage of a certain job if you're doing job related. You know, maybe I just don't allow chloride systems to be coded to office supplies because someone keeps making that mistake. So you can build in rules to the system. Maybe Nick is only allowed to enter invoices for this particular vendor, and they must be job related. So I default that to be turned on. I won't let the add button be clicked without ticking that particular checkbox there. So workflow is one piece of this. And then the rules is another piece. And then the logging is the final piece. So putting that all together, you know, it's a pretty powerful add-on to control the Sage 300 system. It kind of sits on top and can work through all of the different modules with the existing database. So let's go ahead and pause there, see if there's any questions on that I can help answer, Stephen.
Yes, so we did have one that came in. It says, does Extender work with OE?
Yes, it does. So Extender will work with sales order entry. Again, any module that is in Sage 300. So I could have something with sales order entry where I want to, you know, maybe Nick is only allowed to do, and this is, you know, kind of piggybacking on Ian, but Nick might always do a certain template which fills this in. So as soon as I click new, it's going to fill in template Nick. Or it might restrict me to a certain price list. And yes, you could do norming price list for that as well if that was the one thing you wanted to control. But, you know, this could say, you know, you must fill in the ship via and the expected ship date before you can click post. So answer is yes. And just, you know, a quick, you know, kind of thinking about some options or some ways you would use that in sales order entry.
Thanks, Nick. Another one is, can I approve something without logging in Sage 300?
Yes, that is a great question. And that's a newer feature of Extender, and it's called remote action. And this is a little bit difficult to show because I need the email and I need it to kind of get set up. But what we do is set up the workflow just like you saw there, and do exactly the same thing in Sage 300. But we're going to build some message templates here. So for, say, a customer credit limit, on this customer, such and such has attempted to change this credit limit. It was done by Nick, and it was done at this particular time. So an email will go out to the approver, and the approver will be able to click on a link there, so they don't even have to log into Sage, and they can approve or reject that, put in a comment. They can even say, I don't want this to go to 35,000, but I'll allow 30,000. So they can also edit the approved amount or approved change before it gets put back in. So great question. I can do it from a link in an email, and I don't have to have access to Sage 300 anymore.
Perfect. Thanks, Nick. And I think this might be like a follow-up question, but it says, does Extender provides workflow for transaction processing, OE? So you might have answered that one, but that was another one that came in.
So yes, it certainly could, and maybe we got to get into what types of, what the question, the meaning behind that is, and what type of workflow we'd think about. But so yes, absolutely. If I wanted to not allow someone to, post if there's a back order or something like that, if I wanted to make sure that the credit limit is available, or I wanted to, so yes, that's why this is such an amazing tool, is because there really is no limit to what rule or what workflow you can put on. So we just need to talk through what the specifics would be there. Maybe you say, okay, I don't want a certain, anything below a certain margin, which piggybacks on some of the functionality that's already in the canned inventory and order entry. But, you can say, I don't want it to go below safety stock levels here, so I can't post it because that's going to take us below this level. And we just can't be that low. So this customer can't buy this much of that kind of thing.
Thank you. And then we're going to take one more question before we move on to Ian. The last question was, can we control different databases with Orchid Extender? Yes,
absolutely. All of the any Sage 300 database. And one other thing I failed to mention is, this can also control any third-party module that is done in the SDK. So, Ian was showing norming in the SDK. Orchid is built in the SDK. And what that means is it uses the Sage 300 technology, looks and feels like Sage. So Service Manager, AutoSimply that we're going to show later, norming products, TaiRox products. So any of the third-party add-ons that are built in the SDK, Extender will work for as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Nick. So now we can move on to Ian with TaiRox.
Great. Thank you for that, Nick. I always get excited whenever I see Extender. I mean, it's just one of those things which, as you say, it's just literally bound by your imagination and pretty boundless as to what it can do. So we're going to go ahead and look. And another thing that always intrigues me is that when we're working, again, in our current climate with coronavirus and people working from home, many people are adapting to the computers that they have to work on and the access that they have. And all of a sudden, things that weren't really that critical when everybody was in the office and they were visible and anybody could walk around and see what they were up to, all of a sudden we've got all of these other concerns about, gosh, do they have access to something that we ought not to have access to? And for anybody who's ever administered the security within Sage 300, you'll know that it's extremely capable, but sometimes it can be a little difficult to administer. I mean, you've got the username and password layer. You've got the ability to restrict the times that people can log into the system. You've obviously got the various security groups that you can go ahead and put things around different screens. You can give people access to different modules or not, depending on their specific needs within the organization, or to even be able to log into specific companies, or even to have awareness of certain companies. But if somebody asked you as an IT person, for example, gosh, who can get in to see our vendors, right? That sometimes is a difficult question to answer. So what TaiRox has done is really they've gone ahead and filled in that gap that Sage 300 would otherwise have. So when we're looking at the TaiRox user management tool, this again is also written using the same technology as Sage 300. In this particular case, what I've done is I've just called up the permissions for this particular company, and I was asked who has security access to be able to enter purchase orders. And I can immediately see that, of course, the administrator has permissions, and I'm able to answer very succinctly exactly what permissions Jen has within the purchase order module, and also what Max has within the security module. And I can choose to run this either for one user, I can run it across multiple companies, or just across one database. If you're having to do an audit, and somebody's doing a technology audit, and they're looking at your overall system security, again, SOX is short for Sarbanes-Oxley, obviously, for those of you that are accounting minded, or perhaps not even accounting minded. This is really designed to be able to produce a report to your auditors that would show you exactly that you have been administering controls properly. And then if they chose to go ahead and dive into something else, you'd be able to go ahead and take care of that. So from a practical perspective, being able to support audit is a big concern, and to be able to make sure that your organization is protected and that you have appropriate controls in place. That's all fine and dandy, but what about the speed of going ahead and onboarding or even offboarding an employee? How many times does somebody actually bother to go back, because it's a lot of hassle, and to actually remove people's security rights from any module that's there? Quite often within a small office environment, people could be even sharing a password. So just because they don't have access to something, this is an easy way of making sure that you don't need to do that anymore. So within the user management tab, we have the capability of going ahead, and from our drop-down list, we have about a dozen or so different functions here that allow us to be able to migrate any aspect of a user's experience within Sage from one company to another, or from one user to another within the same company. So you can see that this is a pretty comprehensive list to be able to clone one user to be able to onboard somebody else that needs similar permissions, even down to the point of also being able to copy reports. So again, you probably know that reports and custom programs within a desktop don't always need to be made available to every user. They can be personal to that specific user, or you may have specific groups of users that need to be able to do things in a certain way. So you can go ahead and clone their look and feel of their screen, the customization directories that they're using, including their printing preferences as well, and any macros or reports or anything else that they have at all, you can go ahead and do that. One other thing that, just from a simplicity of people being able to guess, again, from a remote work perspective, who knows whether somebody is sometimes working out of a Starbucks or something else like that. And we're all kind of, to varying degrees, a little more self-conscious or conscious or paranoid, even in some instances, about security. So another useful feature that I like about this is being able to go and see who's got strong passwords and who's got things that are perhaps too simple to guess. So this is an exception report showing that in this particular case, my admin user, it's got exactly the same password as the username. That's not very secure, is it? And similarly here, that I've got common passwords that are being used, or frequently used passwords being used by my other user. All right, so this gives me an easy way of being able to go back, produce a report, and give it to somebody as your IT director and say, look, we really need to go ahead and force a change on the security. And as you know, within administrative services, you can then go ahead and say that in the specific user, I'm going to require that next time they log in, they have to change that password. So pretty easy way of going ahead and looking, gosh, where do we potentially have exposure within the organization, because people can either get in to places that they ought not to be able to get into, or their password might be too easy. And again, from a practical perspective, being able to go ahead and set up security for new users to onboard them or to offboard them a lot quicker than we might otherwise be able to do so. So that's the end of that little section. What I'll do, if you'll indulge me, is I'll go ahead and talk through a couple of other solutions that I want to discuss as well by the same author, by TaiRox, and then I'll stop and I'll take questions at the end of this section. So the next utility that I want to talk about is exchange rates. So as we know, Sage is extremely functional when it comes to being able to deal with exchange rates. So if I'm in a Canadian dollars company here, and if I'm looking at managing exchange rate, you can see that I've got various exchange rates. Because I have a US dollar bank account, I need to be able to translate the currency from Canadian dollars into US dollars. And I'm actually going to multiply the rate by this amount to arrive at my US dollar equivalent. So that's great, but it's a bit of a hassle to sometimes stop or remember that you have to go ahead and do this thing every single day. So we have this nice little utility called download rates that enables us to go ahead and choose a particular bank, define what rates we're interested in getting, and then with a simple click from here, I say, yes, I want to proceed. It gives me notification that the rates have now been downloaded as quickly as that. We also have the ability to schedule this as a task, so it can run at 2 o'clock in the morning when you're at home, hopefully enjoying a good night's sleep and not worrying about your exchange rates. All of this can happen in the background. And then as soon as we come into this screen and we refresh it, you'll notice that I now have up-to-date rates as of yesterday as well. So it's added another row into that. So nice, simple utility, again, super inexpensive to be able to go ahead and administer your multi-currency exchange rates without having to come in every single day, and potentially to go ahead and do, if you're working with Europe, you're going to be downloading Euro translations, and that might be back to US dollars. It could be US dollar to euros. If you're working in African countries, then you're going to have a whole bunch of different currencies there as well, potentially, that you need to be able to translate back to a common reporting currency. So this really takes away that whole layer, that burden of you having to do that. Lastly, I want to talk about check approvals. So while we're all working from our homes, various other locations, what we want to be able to do is to go ahead and be very guarded about our cash flow within our organizations. So to be able to do that, quite often, I was chatting with a company this morning actually that has controls around their purchase orders, which is pretty normal. And also, as Nick spoke to, having controls around their invoices as well, that they won't book invoices until such times as those have been approved. But then there's also the layer of putting approval workflows around check production. So Nick had shown you in Extender how you can prevent setting up new users or setting up new vendors, rather. There's also then somebody might try to circumvent that by going ahead and changing the payee name. So the check might say it's going to the same vendor, but maybe they've just changed the name of the remit to on it, even though it's still under the same vendor account. So want to build out further controls around the check payment process. And we do that by using something called check approval. So check approvals can be set up with multiples of different ways. I'm going to do a simple two-step process for today, that a particular payment batch has been generated by somebody probably in accounts payable, but then it needs to pass through a two-step approval process before those checks can actually be cut, okay? For the sake of my presentation today, we're going to go ahead and look at Ian being the first level of approval and the administrator being the second level approval. So in the interest of time, what I've done is I've actually gone ahead and I've created a payment batch already. First thing that's worth speaking to is, you might be looking, if you're kind of a technical geek and you're looking at this, you're saying, gosh, what's happened to the payment batch? Well, the payment batch list is actually replaced in this particular instance by an extended payment batch list, because we've extended the functionality of the program. And apologies for that, I'm on a demo license. And in this particular case, you can see that we've got this batch out here that I'm now going to follow through and submit for approval. I'm also got the option of being able to go ahead and send an email. So I'm going to send an email that would notify me that I have an approval waiting. And at this point, you can see that it's been submitted for approval and it's waiting for me to take action on it. The difference compared with the normal batch list is that we have this additional button on here that says that this approval is in progress. Okay, it doesn't normally exist. And we can see up here that what we would normally expect is that the batch has rolled to having a check creation in progress status. So I'm going to quickly go ahead and log in to my Sage company. I don't have to do this in Sage, but I'm going to go ahead and log in as Ian. I might be normally working in Sage anyway. And I'm going to go ahead and use my check approval console. And the first thing that you'll notice once this pops open is that, assuming it's going to pop open for me, seem to have a glitch that it doesn't want to open. Okay, if it's not going to cooperate, I'm not going to waste a bunch of time on this. What I would see is that I now have a console which loads up batches either from one company or from multiples of companies. So any company where I am an approver will appear in my approval console at the same time, okay? So you can structure that with a folder structure that shows different companies and the different batches within that, okay? Once I've gone ahead, and then I have an option as a user to be able to either go ahead and to approve or to reject that particular process. That in turn will spawn a second email that will go to my secondary approval, who will all go through the same steps. They will open up the check approval console. They will see that there is a check that needs to be cut that has gone through the first level of approval, or equally, they may be the first approver in a certain instance, or they may have permissions that are sufficient with an approval level sufficiently high to be able to go ahead and make approvals anyway. So once it's gone through those multiples of steps, then what happens is that the normal icon, and unfortunately I'm not going to be able to show you because I've got this technical glitch at the moment, but what then happens is that the payment batch list shows that the transaction would then be completely approved, and then I can go ahead and print my checks. But until such times as it goes through those controls, I'm unable to further this any further. Pause and take some questions.
Thanks, Ian. So the first question that came in, it says, can TaiRox check approvals be used without having to be in Sage?
Yes, absolutely. It can, yes. So it can even be accessed, depending on how you have your network configured, it can even be accessed from a mobile device or from an iPad as well. So you can be completely external to the office, so long as you're set up with access through any device, say mobile, iPad, or anything else, then it's a standalone application at that point.
Thanks, Ian. And we had one more that came in. It says, can check approvals be based on payment amounts?
Yes, it can. Yeah, you can actually manage approvals in 3 different ways. So you can either have a sequence of approvers, which is what I was planning on going through the full process this morning, or you can go ahead and have approvers that can approve, but not necessarily in any sequence. Or also you can go ahead and say that so long as somebody who has a minimum monetary limit approves it, that is considered to be approved as well. And that can be 1 or more with monetary approval.
Perfect, thanks. So I think that's all the questions we have for this section. We can move on to Nick with AutoSimply.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Ian and Steven. Okay, so lastly, we're going to talk about a suite of products to help control inventory. And we know a lot of our clients are working remotely, and we talked about controlling people, which is oftentimes the largest expense in an organization. But some of our clients do have to go to the office, do have inventory, do have to be there. So we didn't forget about you. And we know inventory can sometimes, depending on what you sell, challenge labor as the number one expense. It certainly has a huge dollar value for many of our clients. So certainly out of the box, Sage 300 has a really good, very robust inventory module. You can do assemblies, you can do transfers, you can do adjustments there. But recently we've helped our clients, take that a bit further, and we've added, parts of this suite from AutoSimply. So the suite is made up of a number of tools. So the first we're going to talk about is called trading, or think of this like purchase planning. And that, in fact, that was the old name for it, where I might come in and say, okay, I'm going to build a forecast for a certain item and say, okay, I expect to sell these at such and such date and time. And then I'm going to say, when do I need to buy these? And ultimately what we're building is something called a planning run here, where the system is then going to tell me, based on the stock on hand, based on the forecast that I have plugged in, based on my POs, when I need to buy things to have them on, in stock to be able to satisfy the demand for the forecast that I've plugged in. So this is a fantastic tool where, you don't have to do manufacturing or anything to use this. Just put this piece in to better control, when you need to put orders into the system based on the lead time, based on, the demand that you decide on with your team. Next, if we go over to the manufacturing section, there's a suite of modules or components, so to speak, that can sit on top of inventory control, still in the SDK like we talked about, like everything we're showing today. And it can add additional levels to bills of material. It just takes it a step further, where I might have a finished good that has a number of different operations, different steps, different stages, different departments that it goes through, different machines that it goes through. It might have various different components within it that I need to build as subcomponents and put together. We might have different versions of the bill of material with different approval dates and source documents that I want to browse out to for CAD designs and things like that. Some instructions for each step along the way. And then, of course, all the optional fields, all the standard things you'd see normally in Sage 300. Well, what I would do here is I would take my inventory, take my assemblies or my bills of material that I have in the canned inventory module. And if I need to do a bit more than that, we could implement the manufacturing module from AutoSimply. And then we'd work towards building manufacturing entries. And MO entries, if we take a look at one here and just maximize this, I could see that, I'm going to build or order 30 of these to be completed. I can see all of the different raw material that needs to go in this. Again, I can see which steps or which stages or operations that's going to go into. Is there any scrap there? I can see the history of what else has been done for this. Again, any child parts that get built first to make the next level or work all the way up to the multi-level bill of material. Any subcontractors that go in here, that if we're going to bring someone in to do polishing, cleaning, welding, whatever the case might be, I can add all that cost. So it just takes the canned inventory assembly and bill of material and adds a whole bunch of additional functionality to it. And I only have a few minutes to talk about this whole suite, so we certainly can do future demos on this whole suite if you'd like, but just want to show you a little bit of the power of it and how it can help control things. And then lastly, what it'll do is allow us to do, be more cognizant of scrap, and waste and control those costs that go into inventory. Move to more of a Kanban or a just-in-time inventory and not have as much expense just sitting there, out on your warehouse floor. So you can really, really, really improve things by adding something like this if that fits your organization. And then there's a module called production planning, and we saw trading, MRP, which is purchase planning. So we won't do exactly the same thing here, but production planning is very much like it's a sister product to trading, but it's really focused on what do I need to make and when do I need to make it, rather than what do I need to buy and when do I need to buy it. And then the next piece you might add is called shop floor control. So if we go into shop floor control and take a look at, a shop entry here, I'm pulling up. What this is now doing is allowing me to go out onto my floor and control the cost and control the movement of a particular finished good as it goes through our process. So if it's going to this machine to be cleaned and this machine to be welded, this machine to be polished, this machine to be painted, I can set up these operations and work centers and track the time that it goes through each stage and what those happen to be. So as I go through here, is this runtime, setup, cleanup, downtime, and you can make these different steps or these different transaction IDs. So now you're getting some really good intelligence into your process and better controlling the cost as we go through. And it's all about control, right? And in fact, it has shop floor control right in the name. And then we're going to finish with a barcode discussion, but when I talk about barcode, that can be for inventory, it can be for counting, it can be for manufacturing, it can be for purchasing, receiving, but it also can be for shop floor control. So I can do all of this with a barcode or a scanner solution in my hand rather than data entry. Now, the next piece is quality control. And quality control allows me to generate another inventory location. So now, whether I'm buying these goods or I'm making these goods, if we have clients that have some steel and they need to at first have it come into a quarantine location so they can make sure they have the right certifications for it, we can set up different teams, different users, different locations, different reasons for scrapping things or putting things into quarantine. And it adds a whole level of transactions for us to do purchasing. So I'm going to buy it and it's going to come into quarantine before I then release it out into inventory control. It is also connected to manufacturing, right? So if after manufacturing, I need to create a transaction to have it, stay in inventory until we've QC'd it, stay in quarantine until we've QC'd it before it's ready to be sold, we're creating, audited transactions or documented transactions for each of the steps in the QC process. So again, controlling it from purchase or manufacturing until it's ready to be sold to the end customer. And then lastly is, the barcode solution, which as I mentioned, can cross all of these different modules: inventory, manufacturing, purchasing, quality control, shop floor control. That allows me to do all of that with a handheld. And I know that was quick, only had a few minutes to discuss, to cover all of those different pieces, but let's open that up for a few questions. And as I said, we'd be happy to, spend more time on that or go, into greater depth there if need be.
Appreciate. Hey, Nick, we did have one question. It said, do I need to implement the entire suite of AutoSimply products?
No, absolutely not. In fact, over the last, few months, certainly, and over the last year, we've helped clients that may have just done barcoding, or we've had clients that have just done quality control or just done trading. We had a client that started with manufacturing, got that going, got better control there, and then added lot and serial control, and then QC, and then added barcoding, about a year later. So absolutely not. You can go piece by piece by piece and add them in the right, the right order so that they fit your process. Good question.
Perfect. Thanks, Nick. I think that's actually all the questions we do have, so I can go ahead and wrap up. If you guys do have any questions, email us at am@acumenfl.com. You can always give us a call at 407-965-2411. Be sure to follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. We will be sending out a Survey Monkey, so if you're still interested in learning about more of these products, or if you want to learn about any other products in the future, let us know, and we'd love to hear your suggestions. Or you can always reach out to your assigned account manager. Our next webinar will be automating processes during the second wave, which is next Thursday, July 23rd. We'll send out a reminder next week, so be sure to sign up and attend. Again, guys, thanks for joining. Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Ann, for the great presentation, and we hope to see you guys soon.